Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough. Today's review was requested by my fellow reviewer and content creator, Otaku Nate Milbank.
Hello everyone and welcome to Otaku Nate's Lost Worlds of Anime, taking you to realms unknown in the anime spectrum.
And of course, we're going to be revisiting a classic subject here on the Media Wiz, country music. Or a country musician, more specifically, because this album isn't really a country album by definition. The point is, we're talking about Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks was often regarded as one of the last true country singers. He started making music in the 80s, and he retained a certain dignity in the country world, especially around the time of the 90s when they were exporting country pop like Billy Ray Cyrus. You remember his shtick after Achy Breaky Heart. Most of it was him playing up the denim-laced heartthrob, even resulting in a collaboration song with Dolly Parton and some other female country artists swooning over him. Meanwhile, acts like Tim McGraw and Garth Brooks still felt like they had the same level of country charm, like a modern update of the old country acts during the Cash years. Brooks maintained a status among the country charts and even sold over 100 million copies of his albums. But as the 90s were coming to an end, Garth Brooks tried a bunch of different business ventures like a lot of other celebrities before him. He went on to create his own production company with Red Strokes Entertainment. He temporarily became a baseball player for the San Diego Padres, and most ambitious of all, he wanted to make a movie. One that would follow an alter ego he created named Chris Gaines. He even came up with an entire lore for the character and everything. How he was born in Australia in the 60s and moved to America in the 70s, how he formed a band, how he developed a sex addiction, lost his father and several of his bandmates, and was taken advantage of by corrupt music producers, and all of this was going to be for a movie simply titled The Lamb. But keep in mind, Brooks really wanted this to be a success. The studios weren't entirely confident in this, since a lot of mainstream audiences didn't know who the character was, so they put their all into marketing the thing. MTV and NBC documented it. Brooks went on SNL as Chris Gaines to perform one of the Chris Gaines songs. VH1 had Billy Joel and a couple of others show up in a special to promote Chris Gaines as if he was a real musician. And of course, they released a Chris Gaines album that would serve as the film's soundtrack. But as most of you could probably guess, that movie The Lamb never actually happened. While Brooks was offered movie roles for films like Twister and Saving Private Ryan, a lawsuit broke out with a former business associate because he screwed her over financially. Allegedly, he pitched the movie by bringing up how he lost his father, similar to the Chris Gaines character, which wasn't even true at all. His father was still alive and well at the time. While there was news circulating about the film going on in the 2000s, the film ultimately got shut down because the public's reception to the Chris Gaines album, lack of interest from the general public, and Brooks not wanting to split profits with the studio. So imagine you take a movie like Spinal Tap, which was meant to parody documentaries about musicians, they made a soundtrack for it to tie into the movie, and then they just never made the movie. That's what this is. The album was released by Capitol Records, who Brooks frequently worked with. The producer was the ever-popular Don Was, who was mostly remembered for working with acts like the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan, and he went on to work for things like the Chris Gaines soundtrack. And despite Brooks doing the vocals and creating the title character, he actually didn't write the songs. A lot of the writing duties were handled by other famous Nashville country artists. So is this album really that bad to not warrant a movie to tie into it? Well, let's find out. This is The Life of Chris Gaines, or Chris Gaines' Greatest Hits, by Garth Brooks. Let's start with the first song off of the album, That's the Way I Remember It.
To say would be fair, girl, nothing compares to when I call you on my own. So darling, know that I've done you think twice. Those were the best days of my life. It never will be that way again. Maybe it was and way back when. To my heart and soul, this is the way the story has to be told.
Yeah, you might notice that this song has a certain pop sheen to it. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because Garth Brooks meant for this to be more of a pop album than a country album, which explains why this song sounds like a rejected boy band single. I mean, it's not as annoyingly sweet as most boyfriend country music is these days, but wow. In a way, it reminds me of a lot of the country romance pop songs we were getting in the early 2010s, like Hunter Hayes, for anyone who remembers his 2012 hit Wanted, just minus the piano. Alright, well, let's get to the first of the 3 singles off of the album, the one that actually got a music video, Lost in You. Alright, so much like the last song, this is a post-breakup song, and get ready because that's going to be a recurring theme throughout the album, where Chris Gaines regrets letting that one special girl of his dreams leave him. And if you thought the first one sounded like a boy band R&B song, just wait till you hear the chorus of this one.
I'm head over heels and it shows. I've played every field, I suppose, but there's something about you when you're around, baby. I have found I get lost in you.
Get ready for more of this, people. This is only song number 2 on a 13-track album. It's also not helped with the music video. It's loaded with a bunch of cliches that you'd expect from a post-breakup song music video, with non-stop fade transitions and, oh, he's standing all alone as people just pass him by in the train station or wherever the hell this is supposed to take place. And if you're curious, that actually is Garth Brooks as Gaines in the music video. He successfully lost weight and donned a soul patch and emo hair combination for the character. Well, I'll give him this, he sports it better than Keemstar when he did his Leafy impression. I mean, it's still pretty out of touch and everything, but still, it's leagues above that. I got curious and looked up what other Garth Brooks fans thought of this, and while a lot of them were open to the idea of this album, including the head of the Garth Brooks fan site at the time saying that it was a welcome side project, but hoped that it wouldn't overshadow Brooks' usual music, there was also a decent handful of country fans that weren't ready for this kind of music. I am not the world's biggest fan of country music, and I'm not ready for it. Next up is Snow in July. Considering the heat waves we've been having lately, I can't help but feel a little envious of that title. The song itself is yet another post-breakup song, except this time it's meant to be a lot more spiteful, as it's revealed that the girl broke up with him, and he compares her leaving to a sudden snowstorm in summer. Not a horrible analogy, I guess. You also might notice the beat to this one is a little bit different from the other two. It's because this is one of the many songs that falls into another genre. You see, there are 2 different types of genres that are on display here. If it isn't pop/R&B, the rest of the songs try to go for an alternative kind of sound. I mean, after all, this was around the same time that acts like Creed and Train were on the rise. Honestly though, I don't really hate the beat to this one. It has decent bass and drums at the beginning. Makes it a little bit better, I suppose. And now back to basics with Driftin' Away, where he sadly laments about the girl he wants back in his life, with even more R&B sounding lyrics during the chorus.
It goes and nobody knows where it's going to. I'm drifting away. It goes and nobody knows what it's gonna do.
Yeah, the more I listen to this, I can't help but be reminded of that NSYNC Christmas album I reviewed years ago, and that was from an actual boy band. It's songs like this that make me wonder what the Chris Gaines movie would have been like, and right now I'm just picturing that this would have been one of the many songs that came after a nasty breakup between some kind of obligatory love interest in the movie. That's what these kind of songs feel like to me. By the way, this album does that thing where it flip-flops between songs where the singer begs for their ex to come back to them, and songs where they just crap all over them and say they were horrible human beings that never loved them, as evident by the song that follows this one, Way of the Girl. Just sound like a sour boyfriend who hasn't gotten over getting dumped. I don't really hate this one, mostly because the instrumental has some pep to it. Maybe it's just because I'm a fan of a lot of rock music in general, but I'm gonna be mostly forgiving towards some of the alt-rock songs that are on here. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not great alt-rock or anything, but when it comes to songs off of this album, they're some of the better songs in my opinion. Also, maybe this is just me, but does anyone else think that the intro to this song sounds like a certain 90s theme song? Let me see if you hear it too.
Now this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, maybe that one's just me. Thankfully, the next song mixes things up a bit, as it's about a girl who gets a letter from a secret admirer, and she takes a chance to meet him in Boston. Far from a great song, but at least it has some energy to it, and at least seems somewhat optimistic. And it's not just the same, "We had a good thing going, I wish I had you back," or another, "Fine, you heartless bitch, you never loved me anyway," type song. So just based on it being something different, it gets points in my book. Next up is the second of the three singles, "It Don't Matter to the Sun." Well, it seems like we're back to the "I wish I had you back, babe" lyrics and themes, but this one's done as a slow song. About how the world will just keep on turning whether or not they get back together, but getting back with this girl is just so important to him.
There'll still be a tomorrow, even if you choose to leave. 'Cause it don't matter to the sun, but it matters to me. It don't matter to the moon if you're not in my life. No, the moon will just keep hanging round, like it's just another night. 'Cause it ain't gonna stop the world, but it'll be the end of mine.
Maybe it's because this one feels more like a typical country slow jam. I don't really hate this one either. It's certainly not a go-to song or anything for me, but this one has some more genuine feel to it than the first few tracks did. Plus, the slower instrumentation with the guitar and piano is at least pleasant enough for me to give it a pass. At least it doesn't have the stupid R&B backing vocals crap like some of the other tracks on here did. Next up is the third and final single off of the album, Right Now, which allegedly has a music video, but I searched high and low and I couldn't find one. Either the internet just refuses to house it, or more realistically, maybe the music video got scrapped. Which is saying something, since I was able to find the music video for Freaking Wise Guy by Joe Pesci, but not Right Now by Chris Gaines. This one is supposed to be a feel-good song about how we should all love one another, with verses asking what could possibly be making everyone so hostile these days. I'm going to show you a highlight reel of some of the funnier lyrics in the song, but believe me, if you want to have a good laugh, I recommend listening to the song in its entirety.
Maybe it's the movies, maybe it's the books, maybe it's the government and all the other crooks, maybe it's the drugs, maybe it's the parents, maybe it's the games or the colors that we're wearing, maybe it's the president, maybe it's the last one, maybe it's the one before that, maybe it's the athletes, maybe it's the ads, maybe it's the sports fans, agents, fads, maybe it's the fallout, maybe it's the ozone, maybe it's the chemicals, the radiation, cell phones, maybe it's the magazines, maybe it's the next page, lotteries, fast food, bad news, road rage, maybe it's the taxes, maybe it's the system, judges, lawyers, prisons, maybe it's the Catholics, maybe it's the Protestants, maybe it's the addicts and the hippies and the communists.
Seriously, if you want to have a good laugh at some geopolitical, pseudo-conspiratorial lyrics, I highly recommend this one. I do appreciate the overall message of the song, but I don't know, some of it just comes off as funny to me, the way he lists some of these things off. I mean, most of it rhymes, though rhyming family with TV is a bit of a stretch. For some reason, there's always songs like this that occasionally come out. Like a few years after this one, Jadakiss did that infamous Why song where he asks some legit questions, sandwiched in between a bunch of stupid, vapid ones. This one seems a bit more sincere than that one, but still, it's interesting how songs like this always seem to slip through the cracks every so often. Sadly though, Right Now is probably my favorite song off of the album, just based on how unintentionally funny some of the lyrics are. Plus, I can't help but be reminded of that one scene from Walk Hard where Dewey Cox was talking about trying to make more serious music when the 60s came rolling around.
I can't spend all my time thinking about Dewey Cox no more. I've got to think about the other people.
Like your family?
No, I mean like people that's having injustices done to them.
Like women and midgets and such.
Yeah, you see, that is the same kind of vibes that I get from this kind of song. After that, we get a song called Main Street, which I can only assume would have been the song near the end of the movie, where Chris Gaines finally conquers adversity and his inner demons and all that. It just has such a finale feel to it. It's not terrible, it just sounds like your usual country small town type of song, which aren't really my thing. Unlike Lost in You or Right Now, it's not really memorable like some of the other tracks. After that is White Flag, and at first I thought this was going to be some song relating to war. I mean, after all, the character was born in the 60s and moved to America in the 70s, so I thought this was going to be like a Vietnam song or something like that. And then one lyric rolled around and the metaphor became all too clear.
'Cause I love you, baby, ain't no doubt. Isn't that what love is about?
It's another song about an ex-girlfriend. While the topic is a bit worn out to me, I'll give the song one thing. The chorus is kind of catchy. I mean, the lyrics are whatever, but the beat at least kept my attention. It's like I said, the alt-rock sounding songs are the most lenient I'm toward on this album.
Sending up, sending up, sending up a white flag. Damn these circumstances. Love is headed for a fall. So before we lose it all, oh baby, I'm sending up a white flag.
Alright, next up is Diggin' for Gold. And let me guess, before the song even starts, it's a song about gold diggers, isn't it?
Do you love me, baby? Do you want me to hold? Or are you just digging for gold?
Skip it. I mean, the beat to this one is nice, but the lyrics can just piss off. We only have 2 more songs anyway, and then we're done. Now we're back to the slow ballads with Maybe, a song of Gaines finally letting go and accepting the breakup, assuming that maybe one day they'll get back together, or maybe he can learn to live without her. In a way, I can only assume this was meant to be the song for the big sad montage during the 3rd act of the film when they inevitably break up, as if this was their attempt to make a song similar to, like, Making Love Out of Nothing and songs like that.
Maybe I could stand alone. Maybe I'm strong as stone. Even though the bird has flown, maybe she'll fly on.
The instrumental is fine, I guess, but the lyrics are at least something different. It's not more of the same like the first half of the album. There is more of an optimism here compared to songs like Way of the Girl, which just felt like they were loaded up with bitterness and contempt. So at least this one's kind of pleasant to listen to. And let's end with another alt-rock romance song about how he'll do anything for you and how true love conquers all, or something, with the final track, My Love Tells Me So.
Some things can be good forever. My love tells me so. Two hearts can be one together. My love tells me so.
Right, well, that was The Life of Chris Gaines by Garth Brooks, and I'm lost for words. I mean, it's not like it's the worst album I've ever listened to or anything, but man, this was a weird freaking album. Music on this album ranges from sounding like generic breakup songs to kinda catchy alt-rock from the late 90s. Some of the romance theme songs are fine, but a lot of them are just needlessly spiteful. It probably would have made more sense in the movie, but I really can't say for sure. I kinda doubt it. I don't think Brooks lost a lot of fans for this, since after all it was just a side project. Even after his brief hiatus in the early 2000s, he eventually went back to making his usual country music affair in 2005. It's kinda hard to say if this was an absolute failure. Sure, most country audiences didn't take to it well, and I'm certain a lot of critics took their shots at it, but it seems like Lost in You and some of the other singles got some decent reception. Hell, in 1999, Lost in You scored top 5 in the top 100, and the album itself scored number 2 on the album charts that same year. As of late, Garth Brooks once said on a Facebook Q&A that he wants to bring the Chris Gaines character back and release more music as the character. Not really sure if that will go forward at the time of this review, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I don't really think this album was good or anything, but for a musical side project with such a strangely elaborate backstory, I was fascinated enough to dig it out and see for myself. Like I said, not really a fan of this album, but I did learn a decent amount of some, interesting music history, I guess. We'll tune in next time to the Media Wiz, where we'll be talking about more disliked episodes of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I am so sorry. Until then, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough.
You are my godsend that I have been forever dreaming of. My angel from above, Heaven knows, head over heels and it shows. Played every field, I suppose, but there's something about you when you're around.
Maybe it's a homeless, aliens, immigrants, maybe it's life. Don't tell me that it's imminent.
Why did Bush knock down the towers?
Fucking magnets, how do they work?